So we always like to think about Mount Pleasant as like, what are its distinguishing features? What's really different about it? How is it not Yonge Street, just parallel to you, or Bayview, very close to you? How is it actually distinct and different? And one of the characteristics, I think, that is evident not only here in this section of Mount Pleasant, but if you think of it as a whole corridor that really goes to the lake as Jarvis, goes up and down through the ravines and rises actually to a crest right here in this stretch of your neighborhood. That's something very unique. I mean, Toronto is a city built around its ravines, and Mount Pleasant is almost the ultimate ravine street. If you drive it, you're up and down, and you are at actually the high point of this whole amazing sort of evolving experience of the city's topography. And the second thing is that your proximity to Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which isn't just a cemetery, it's actually the city's best arboretum. The fact that you could be within blocks of a resource, a green resource like this, and then at the same time, right at your doorstep, very bustling and vital shop fronts and kind of urban culture, and especially with the changes happening along Eglinton with the Crosstown Initiative, a kind of real buzz of metropolitan density and urban energy. So these two things are kind of amazing building blocks. I'm gonna let Adam jump in, so you're not just standing there shooting. I'm talking too much.
I'm enjoying it. One way you kind of define streets is scale. So the scale is realized in two ways. One is the width and one is the height. When you mix the two together, you get a distinct character. So think of Yonge Street, it's quite wide, but it has a certain height, a certain volume. Bayview, on the other hand, as you guys know, it has a somewhat more of a village kind of scale, which we find interesting. It has, 1 to 2 story buildings along it, and a fairly friendly width. Now, that height is reflected.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, you didn't miss much. That height is reflected on Mount Pleasant, but it just feels kind of wide. And maybe it isn't so wide, but it really feels quite wide. Streets are also a place of diversity, and that's why the BIA's, that's why you guys are set up like Garage, but you look at streets as this amazing place of diversity. Everyone comes together. So many different kind of shopkeepers, merchants, different uses which can assemble along these streets. And we see that on Mount Pleasant, and that excites us as to how that can build into the solution. And so what we did was we walked the streets a number of times. The first thing we actually did as part of this project was just walk the street with the people who occupy the street, and you showed us what you valued about this place. You told us everything from the way it looked, the way that it interfaced with the park, the arboretum. We talked about the balance of the street in terms of that, how much of it feels like it's vehicular, how much is pedestrian. And we started to categorize these things in terms of, what are they, in terms of greening the street, parking space. These are actions we think that we can put together in terms of making a plan. Thanks. Great. So what does a streetscape plan do, or what should it do? Because at the end of the day, we'll put together a document which will have a particular purpose for you, and part of the magic is knowing what you want to do with it. So we think that primarily this is going to be an opportunity for you to look at when development comes along and know what you want to get out of it, frankly. A lot of the time, the way that the City of Toronto is set up is that you have these kind of one-on-one, and they almost feel like little battles every time a development comes along. You fight for one thing, they want another, and you start all over again the next time another development happens. So this is just about having a plan beforehand, standing together, saying this is what we want on the street, and anyone who comes in to develop it understands what they're getting into at the outset. And that's also in terms of the partnerships you can strike up with the city when they have money to spend on the street. The neighborhood speaks as one and says, this is where we'd like to go with our street. It's also an opportunity to get things done now. So if you know where you're going to go, then maybe you can have ideas about how you might activate the street now, rather than waiting for the big capital project or the really big development. Maybe you can actually have some fun in the interim. Mark's going to talk more about that soon.